engineered duplicity. That's what every single person has been doing. And I think the very first person who I know for a fact was the first plant, Jason Taylor. I was 14 or 15 and he moved into my neighborhood, him and his single mother, and we became friends because he said that he liked basketball, even though, again, he was terrible at basketball and always wore his jeans, and it just, if you're a baller, that's not what you do. So that was a lie. He started dating my best friend at the time, and then she moved away from me. And I believe now, given all of the lies that he's told and why he's been put in my life, that he was put there to discredit me. And if he couldn't do it through my actions, because nothing ever happened between me and Jason, believe that, he made something up, probably said that I liked him, or who knows. Only she can answer that question. And he was 17 in grade 9 with a bunch of 14 and 15-year-olds. And then in 2015, so a year after my book came out, in June of 2015 was when he got his company off the ground. And even in an article written about him, when he was 41 at the time, I was 39, that's when I realized that, wow, he's 2 years older. They said that he kind of rose from nowhere, which is what people who come into contact with me tend to do. They're kind of nobodies, and they rise in the ranks pretty quickly, and it's odd, to go from a financial controller to a CFO to a CEO. Interesting. And that just continued. So from there, I go to Calgary. And see, the thing is, my mom believed me. She knew that I was abused and that it was my father. But there was nowhere for us to go. Like I said, even, from when I was 4 years old and she walked in on what she walked in on, my father and that priest committing the unholy act that they were committing. And it wasn't the first time, as she states that he stated in her affidavit. And I am just falling apart at the seams. And then Carlo shows up as a substitute teacher at 20 years old, and I don't think he had any teaching experience, but he was teaching in the wood class next to my metal class. And that was just too much for me to bear. And then my therapist coerced me, and she must, these, when you think about it, like a piece of paper like this wouldn't even exist where it had victims of rape, victims of incest. Why would you do that? And then just how it impacts someone who's abused by their father or someone who's abused by a stranger. It's going to be the same, worse when it's your father. And from there, I get placed, when I finally admit that yes, it was him, because I had stopped going from as soon as I turned 14 and he hurt me for the last time. That was the last time I ever went to his house. So, if I am as crazy as they say, I'm the one who's consistent this whole way through. So a 13 turned 14-year-old just no longer goes to her father's because she's going to eventually name him. Make it make sense. And they told my mother, a psychiatrist came out and told my mother that I was suicidal when I wasn't. And I think that was the story that I guess eventually I just believed, because that's what people told me. So then get to Calgary, and there's a plant waiting for me, and it's Tammy. Wow, Tam. Wow. And I'll put a pin in that for now. And then the other plant was Yvette. So she was going to be my friend if it killed her. She was terrible at basketball, so it never made sense why she was on the team. She's from Cape Town or South Africa, so she played netball and she couldn't dribble worth a damn. So it made no sense. But if she's there to contain me, then it makes a lot of sense. And why she kept persisting on being my friend and love bombing, and it all makes sense now. I just didn't know people like this existed. We're in Calgary for about a month and a half, and my mom comes downstairs. And I know she said, "I know your father molested you," but that wasn't the part that made me so angry and made me hate her so much. It was that I wasn't allowed to talk about anything else, meaning the other abuse that I had to keep to myself, and I have up until the last 6 months, when I was forced and I had no other choice but to talk about it, because I realized what people have been doing to me, how no one in my life, no one was ever who they said they were. PSYOPs, is that what it's called? Psychological operations. So this was a containment strategy. And then I decide to, because, I go live with Tammy, who loves me, who, gets me to trust her. Wow. And I did. And then I spend, my time for the next 4 years between her house and my mom's house. But it was hard living at my mom's because the phone rang and it was scary because I didn't know if it was going to be my father. And my mom was on edge all the time, so she would get that phone on the first ring. No matter where she was in the house, my sister and I would always joke about it. My mom was on that phone, and it barely even rang. And the times that, I had to answer it because no one else was answering it, there was a couple times when it was my father, like I'd said before, and it was an operator, like it was person to person to Carrie Campbell. And I was just like, "Who wants to know?" And I just remember hearing, "Sir," and he goes, "Her father." I was like, click. So that was happening. And then feeling like I was being watched and followed. And then let's fast forward to 1996, when I decide that I gotta get out of Canada and pick the furthest place I could possibly go, Australia. So I'm saving my money. Meanwhile, the priest, Hugh Vincent MacDonald, leaves Cape Breton and goes to his hometown of Orillia, Ontario. The first friend I meet in Australia from that same tiny town, Orillia, Ontario. Another plant, because she's put there to convince me to go south with her and then to convince her to that boat where I get assaulted. It's a minor assault in the big scheme of things, but God, they make a big deal of it. And do you know who else makes a big deal of it? Tammy. I'll read you her letter. So happy birthday, sweetie. You probably aren't reading this exactly on October 25th, but happy birthday anyway. Know that on October 25th, 1996, you were on my mind. You're embarking on some new territory, aren't you? I mean, by charging that guy. I believe this will give you the beginnings of your strength, finding your voice. This is such an adult response to a horrific situation, to let your head hear what your heart is saying, i.e., this is wrong, this must be punished, and to make a clear decision about a course of action without being intimidated or talked out of it. I'm glad Paula supports you too. You'll need lots of support in the upcoming months.
They took me without permission.
5 decades ago, Debbie's fate was decided by a nun at the residential institution.
Man, that woman was mean. Strict, very strict.
Sister Gilberta, her real name was Eleanor Keller, a nun since the 1940s, listed as disciplinarian of girls.
We were singing you know, 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians. Actually, she called us savages, and she should have written there, 1 little, 2 little, 3 little savages.
Sister Gilberta also directed the choir, and Debbie had musical talent. Debbie Paul won high praise for her vocal solo, noted in the records of the Sisters of Charity.
Instead of me going back to the reserve, she thought that I should live with her brother and his wife out in Rockland, Mass, to continue my music.
When the Shubenacadie institution closed, Sister Gilberta snuck the 12-year-old out of the country without telling her family. Debbie was then abandoned with the nun's brother and his wife, John and Mary Wentworth, in Rockland, Massachusetts. What would you call, what she did in terms of taking you and putting you on a plane and bringing you to Rockland? What do you call it?
Theft. Theft.
Debbie went from the trauma of residential school to what's known as the 60 Scoop, a practice of removing Indigenous kids from their families and cultures and putting them in foster care or up for adoption. 2 years ago, she filed a claim for compensation from Canada.
I think I deserve it, to live the end of my life, because I went through hell.
Her claim was officially rejected. Debbie appealed.
Please send us more information on the length of time and location of your placement. I did that, and I have no proof, none, no records. They have no records. Going to Rockland, Massachusetts, checking the town records, doing all that, that's my paperwork.
Debbie needs proof, and she can't find it in Canada. And she wonders why the onus is on her and not the church or government or 60 Scoop lawyers. So she's chasing a paper trail and memories of a place where she was vulnerable and alone. Welcome to Rockland.
To Rockland, there we go.
There it is. Rockland, Massachusetts, 30 minutes outside of Boston. Does it feel strange to be back?
It does, it does.
First stop, the town library. We've requested a property search for 1968 to find the Wentworths.
Go to Myrtle Street. Here they are at 104.
John D. Wentworth, 104.
There, in black and white, John and Mary Wentworth. An important confirmation of what Debbie has said all along.
You have reached your destination on the left.
John and Mary Wentworth both died years ago. But Debbie's painful memories are fresh.
He said not to say anything, but that's part of my chores. Ironing, cleaning, and letting this man feel me up, I guess you can call it. I was 12 years old. Those were my chores.
What does it do 5 decades later for you to stand here and look at the house?
It helps to heal, to face it, not to be scared of it, to face it, to look at it and look at it in the face and says, yeah, I faced it today.
The pieces are falling in place, but Debbie still needs documentation to show she was here as a young teen. We head to the Rockland Public School. In 1968, Debbie felt like an outsider, rejected. Today, a much different experience with an administrator keen to help.
Oh, good, good. Thank you.
Who dug through old files in the school vault.
Oh my God, I got my school records.
Let's see. Finally, proof she was under the guardianship of John Wentworth. For Debbie, this is validation.
This proves everything. This little piece of paper.
In residential school, and then secretly sent here to Rockland, Debbie felt unwelcome and unloved.
Sisters of Charity, where Louise Bray, my godmother, was the general superior, before that, provincial superior. And during both of those times, she was the first that woman had power. And then she takes me, illegally, a forced adoption, my birth mother was seen as sinful. She was a 16-year-old kid, had me out of wedlock, stayed at a horrible home for unwed mothers. And that baby scoop era that was talked about in the 60s, that continued on into the 70s. And things don't just stop when people, like, when it's like no longer, oh, we can't do that, people still do it. I never should have ended up in that house. My father was raped by 2 priests when he was a boy, and then went on to abuse me with the priest who abused him. So, yeah, you could say that a background check wasn't done, but they already knew what they were putting me into, because my father and Louise and Greg, who he was sleeping with, all worked in the same place. Louise and my father were teachers, either in Glace Bay or New Waterford, one of the two. And things just don't add up when you look at her sister Mildred James, after both of her parents, Bray, Louise Mildred James Bray. 1950, Sisters of Charity. 55, New Waterford, teaching at St. Agnes for 10 years. St. Agnes is where Hugh Vincent MacDonald, documentary on YouTube, you can find it, that was the church. And I know that was the church, one of the places that I was abused out of, and it was also one of the places that was closed down and demolished. So in 2014, I got the book deal in November of 2013. And then in February of 2014, the Diocese of Antigonish decided to get rid of 3 of New Waterford's churches, to demolish them. In August, St. Agnes was demolished. In September, my book came out. There were 12 steps to the bottom of that basement, and I'll remember the walk for as long as I live. They couldn't have that. And also another church that was demolished that same year in June was my father's church, St. Anthony Daniel. You could say coincidence. I have a lot of coincidences in my life, though, don't I? A lot of coincidences. So when it said, then she went to 63 and 65, she did a stint in Quebec. Now, that was at the height of the Duplessis orphans abuse scandal, where the government was in collusion with the Catholic Church, reclassifying healthy, poor children to unwed mothers as mentally ill. And that was also at the height of the psychiatrist Ewan Cameron, who worked at McGill University in Quebec, and he performed the most inhumane experiments, like I said, about look up MK Ultra, that was conducted by Ewan Cameron and other psychiatrists that the CIA would hire. So prisoners, people in insane asylums, children that were placed in insane asylums because they thought, well, they're more malleable, so it'll be easier to brainwash them. This happens, I swear to God, this happened to me. Just look it up. So my godmother went up there to learn how to do this, or to just, be there, when all these children are having these horrific things happen to them, because the Sisters of Charity were balls deep in that. Look it up. So yeah, they were institutionalized, abused, experimented upon, forced labor, severe neglect. And then in 1967, what better way to practice everything you've learned than to go to the Shubenacadie Residential School, where Debbie was abused and trafficked, and the horror stories that come out of that school. It was one of the worst in all of Canada, apparently. Again, look it up. Shubenacadie Residential School. Debbie Paul was trafficked to Boston, where she was abused. Louise and Eleanor Kelly, both from Boston, and both buried in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts. 69 to 71, Louise earns her master's in social work at Ottawa, so she's got the psychological background, so she can really fuck with people and get into their files if she needs to. 71 to 81, she's a social worker in Cape Breton, unwed mothers and adoptions, illegal adoptions and placements funneled from Nazareth House, where I was adopted from. 80 to 81, my mother she's got breast cancer and walks in on my father and my godfather, the priest, Louise's friend, Father Greg. And instead of helping us, Louise abandons us. You can imagine how dangerous my mother was to the Catholic Church then, having the information she did. 1982, Louise becomes Superior of Province, Sisters of Charity, and also Chancellor of Mount St. Vincent University, so over the education system. 1988, she becomes General Superior of Antigonish. 1997, as I'm giving my statement against my father, she becomes Director at Southdown Institute. 2006, she retires. You could say this is all coincidence, or I'm just crazy and stretching. But why is everybody lying? And why am I the only one who's telling the truth? And the things that look like discrepancies or look like I'm the one who's done something, they have used my disorder against me. And the fact that I still, like, the brainwashing and everything is so deep. Like, I'm not a dumb person, but I am having trouble articulating, putting all of this in order and articulating, because it's been beaten out of me as a kid, and I've been threatened, can't talk about it ever. And before I leave for Canada, my sister and I are doing something stupid and we're speeding. I got up to like 160, 165 in Tammy's car. Jody's in my mom's, and she's following me from work because I have to go to the airport. And I think this is ridiculous. And then I look in my rear view and I can see lights behind my sister. I'm like, how's she doing that? It's a cop. But we didn't pass a cop. So that cop was following us because he had to speed up to keep up with us. We didn't get charged. Our license weren't taken away. We got tickets. My mom's car got impounded. He let us leave with Tammy's car. Tammy's car was never touched. And my mom somehow got us out of those tickets. And like I said, in 93, when I went to the school to find my birth mother to get my records unsealed, my mother's waiting for me at the doorway and takes me into a room and says, I found your mother that same day. There's a lot of coincidences, huh? Still can't get my records for a year before they even get to it. Small town, under 1 million people in the whole entire province, and it's going to take them over a year. And you know how I talk about my godmother going to Southdown Institute, the dumping ground, the laundering facility for predator priests? Oh, I'm not kidding. I have a list of over 25 priests that I found that Southdown treated. Father John Gowan from Boston, Southdown treatment, July, September 1996. He convicted in 2002 more than 130 boys, serial child rapist. Treated at multiple facilities from 1968 to be released and to reoffend. Michael J. Barletta, Robert Wolk. So James Neal, Went to Southdown in 1988 for 7 months. Returned to ministry. 1999, he pled guilty to sexual assault. 2002, he's hired at a Calgary parish by Bishop Fred Henry. Henry was Southdown's board member. Henry quoted as feeling sorry for Neil, who was branded with a scarlet mark on his forehead. And he also said that he had no idea that Father James Neil, of his background, because, Southdown just treats them and then just redistributes them elsewhere. James Foley in Boston, accused in 1999, sent to Southdown in 2000. Damning letter confirming institutional rot, protecting priests, releasing to reoffend and rape children. 2002, accused again. 2011, accused again. Foley writes he had to offer inaccurate excuses to family and friends to keep them from pain. This is what Southdown told him to do. A lawyer, quote, Southdown deemed Foley at very minimal risk for ministerial boundary violations. And then in a letter from Southdown, they say, good luck, God bless, to James Foley, who went on to rape other children. Father Barry Glennington. My God, it just goes on and on and on. Father J. Howell. So there were 7 predator priests from Pennsylvania. Like I said, watch on Netflix. Watch The Keepings, or The Keeping. It's terrifyingly accurate how scary the Catholic Church is, what lengths they will go to protect their priests. They've killed a nun who was going to come forward because she found out what was happening with the girls at the school by the priests raping them. And then at the same time, I think the Baltimore scandal was the first clergy, the massive one for the institutional rot, for that to break. And guess what? At the exact same time was created the False Memory Foundation. At the exact same time. This is the power. This is what I'm telling you. This is the power the Catholic Church has over everything. Government, the legal system. There's 2 Australian priests sent to Southdown that I found. Father Greg Sutton in Queensland, sent to Boston, spent 12 years in prison for abusing boys and girls, sent to Southdown to avoid conviction in Australia, 1989, investigated by police, told to flee to Canada for treatment, remained in North America until 1999, arrested. So when they told him to flee because he was going to be arrested, he was gone within 4 days. Father Barry James Robinson from Melbourne, sent to Boston. They're all sent to Boston. Began studies in Boston, 1992. Abused a boy in Boston, early 94. Placed at Southdown. Said he recovered sufficiently to resume ministry. The Melbourne Archbishop sought further advice. Keep him on light duties as chaplain of nuns and then chaplain at Peter Mac. Southdown provided another pass. Archbishop placed him at Williamstown Parish in 1996. 2009, 2010, he was still listed on the Catholic Directory as priest doing relieving work in Melbourne. He requested in 2004 to be relieved of his duties. He was temporarily placed on administrative leave, 2010, to a parish in Healesville. There was uproar. Oh, what do you know? In 1992, he was sent to Boston to Jamaica Plain neighborhood, Louisa's Hood, Blessed Sacrament Parish, where he abused a teen boy. This is Southdown. This is where my godmother was director for 10 years.